So you're in the middle of taking a multiple choice test and you don't know what the answer is. So time to guess, right, normally. But one thing you might have always wondered is, are all the choices equal? Are they equally probable? Or are some choices more likely to be correct than others? So maybe you've heard rules of thumb like always pick C or always pick B, and others might claim that A is never going to be right in that situation or is going to be least likely to be correct. And on it goes. And while I can't give you a rule of thumb that's going to work across any test you take, obviously, I can try to answer that question for the SAT. So the question is, out of A, B, C, D, E, is any choice more likely than the other? Or do they all appear at frequencies that coincide with chance? So 1 out of 5, 20% of the time. So a few caveats or a few warnings before I reveal my findings. First, I'm not an expert statistician, so my analysis is pretty rudimentary. I'm sure there's probably a better way to get cleaner data. But though I considered hundreds of practice questions, the results may not be statistically significant because I haven't looked at it, I'm not exactly sure what would make it statistically significant, but still. And finally, though there is a hint in the data, a hint of a trend in the data, it probably shouldn't affect your approach to the test in a significant or appreciable way. And remember that we're never going to guess blindly anyway, so this is kind of a thought experiment because we're never going to guess out of 5. We should always be down to at least 2 or 3 choices before we hazard a guess. So despite these qualifications, we can still use this data, though, I think, to get more of an insight into what the College Board, what the SAT makers are trying to do with their tests, how they're trying to encourage you to select incorrect answers. Now, I'm not going to give you a rule of thumb that works for all the sections. This is a very section-dependent question, right? It's going to depend on whether you're looking at the math, reading, or writing. So let's go ahead and start with math. You can see on the screen I provided the data, and you can see that in math, the most common answer is B. C and D then follow, and then A and E sit about a little bit below chance. So how might we explain this data? Well, first, even though B has a slight advantage or slight appears a little more frequently than chance at 21.3% instead of 20%, it's not that much more common than C and D. So let's group B, C, D as we'll call them inside choices, and A and E we're going to call them outside choices. So it seems that overall outside choices, A and E, appear a little bit less frequently than chance might predict. So why would this be? Well, recall first that math doesn't really depend on process of elimination as much as do the other sections. So most of the time when we're doing a math problem, we solve for the answer directly, and then we look through the choices and we see which choice is our answer, right? So rarely are we considering the choices choice by choice and saying, okay, is this one right, is this one right, is this one right, like we might do in the reading or in the writing. So instead of attracting you with trap answers, which is the typical strategy for the reading and writing, the College Board is going to add choices that reflect common errors you might make in either understanding the problem, setting up the problem, in doing the actual computation of the problem itself. And I think this is where I'm getting into the territory of speculation, because I don't know if this is 100% the answer, but just kind of why I think we see this discrepancy between outside and inside answers is that in order to capture the full range of errors, the College Board is likely going to include incorrect answers that are both less than and greater than the correct answer, right? You're going to want an answer that's going to, at least one answer that's going to incorporate some of the ways you can get the answer too small and other ways too large. And since the choices are generally in ascending or descending order, this is going to mean that outside answers are going to be likely to be either too small or too large, right? And again, this is a trend, so we're not, we're talking about 1-2% here, so it's not a huge trend, but I think we get a little insight as to how they're trying to trick you in the math section. So in the critical reading, we see a similar kind of trend. C here is the most common choice. B and D follow close behind. A is slightly less likely than chance than and E, however, a little bit different from math, appears about near chance, right? So 19.5%, that's pretty much 20%. So why is it A that is significantly under chance, and why the rest, either about chance or equal to, or a little bit above? My thinking here is that the test makers know that you're going to read the choices in order. Most students will start reading the choices from A through E. And they're going to want to generally trap you, right? And they're going to want to do that, present you with at least one incorrect answer choice before they present you with the correct one, right? If they put A as the answer, they're kind of losing the chance to trick you with B, C, and D, and E, because most students, or a lot of students, when they see the answer they think is correct, they just ignore the rest of the choices and they move on. So they want to present you with at least one or two, A and B, incorrect answer choices. They count on you picking A or B, without evaluating other choices. And this is, of course, why I recommend always check all 5 choices. And remember, again, we're talking subtle trends here, trends that only appear over thousands of questions, but they do give us insight into the College Board strategy, which is present incorrect answer choices that will trap students before you get a chance to see correct choices. Now, writing yields the most dramatic trend, I think, out of the 3 sections. C, as we can see in the data, C is the most popular, with D following closely behind. B and E this time are below chance. B, not just A and E, but B and E are below chance, and A is dramatically below chance. I mean, this is the biggest effect, right? We're at 17.2%. We're looking for about 20%. So what might explain these trends? And I think there's 2 possible, not competing explanations, but things that are working at the same time. So first, the College Board is using a similar strategy in the writing as they are in the critical reading, which is to present you with 1 or 2 wrong answers before they present you with the right answer, right? They want to try to trap you before you get a chance to look at what the right answer is. So that's going to tend them to encourage them to make the answer into the C or D range rather than A or B. And I think the effects of this tactics are amplified in the writing section because we see here B is slightly below chance. And the second reason behind this A and E trend is, I think, explained by the SAT's reluctance to use no change, which is A in improving sentences, and no error, which is E in error IDs, as correct answers, right? Remember, all the choices here, unlike the math and the reading, are not equal. A and E, depending on the part of the grammar section you're looking at, are no error choices. And this hypothesis is further corroborated by the frequency. If you look at the frequency of no change versus no errors, no change answers in the improving sentences appear about 16% of the time, whereas no errors appear about 18% of the time, again, below chance. So what overall do we learn from this exercise? So first, C is generally the most common choice, and I think we can generalize a bit better to say that inside choices are more common than outside choices. Now, don't pick C solely for this reason, right? I don't want you to say, oh, C is the most common, I'm going to pick it, because it's a very, very small effect. But this factoid may be useful when you're stuck between 2. Let's say you're stuck between C and A. That might lead you to maybe lean a little bit more towards C. Again, we always want to make the first choice based off of what the actual choices are, but it might give you a little piece of data to lean you towards, say, C rather than A. For math, the College Board is going to include incorrect answers that are both larger and smaller than the correct answer, which is why you see the correct answer is more likely to be inside than outside. And critical reading and writing, the SAT is going to present you with wrong answers before right ones, whether A or A and B. Again, they're trying to draw you into a wrong choice before you see a right one. So again, always check all 5 choices. And finally, in the writing section, no change and no errors are underrepresented, right? Less than 20%, which is what we would expect if it was just by chance. So don't be afraid to pick A and E, but also don't be surprised if less than a fifth of your answers are no errors. So if you have any more questions or comments or insights into why these choices might be at the frequency that they are, let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon.